Have you ever, found yourself in a moment of just absolute heart-pounding desperation?
Oh, we've all been there.
Right, where you just throw a frantic request out into the universe and you feel like you get absolutely nothing in return. Just pure, suffocating silence.
Yeah, the line is just completely dead.
Exactly. You are pleading for a lifeline, and it genuinely feels like nobody is there. It's a moment that strips away all your defenses and leaves you wondering if anyone or anything is actually listening to you.
It is a profoundly isolating experience.
Hmm.
And yet, it is one of the most universal human conditions out there.
Oh, for sure.
Regardless of your background or your personal philosophy or whatever your belief systems are, almost everyone hits that wall at some point.
Yep.
That stark, terrifying realization that you are asking the universe for help and the universe is just leaving you on read.
Welcome to our deep dive. Today, our stack of sources features a short but honestly incredibly dense and provocative text by Hanshi Deena Naidu.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is.
Wow.
Now, for those who might not know, Naidu is a renowned karate master, but more specifically, he is a kihatsu master.
Right, which is a very specific discipline.
Exactly. Kihatsu is a Japanese martial arts philosophy that translates roughly to enlightenment or development. It is a discipline centered entirely on reaching a state of absolute, unbreakable awareness and unifying the mind, body, and spirit.
So we are not just talking about physical combat here.
No, not at all. We are talking about a master of perceiving reality, someone whose entire life is about supreme awareness.
And our mission today is to break down a very specific, and I'd say somewhat controversial, framework that Naidu puts forward in this text.
Yeah, controversial is a good word for it.
He is attempting to explain the actual mechanics behind why prayer or, sending a request out into the universe seems to be this incredibly powerful, immediate tool for some people while leaving others feeling completely ignored and abandoned.
He's basically trying to decode the algorithm of divine intervention.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the central question I do is wrestling with is something I think about a lot. Why is the universe's response rate so wildly inconsistent?
It's the big question, right?
Right. To use an analogy, it's like a cosmic customer service hotline.
I like that.
Why is it that some people seem to have, VIP status, they encounter a crisis, they make the call, someone immediately picks up, and the problem is magically resolved?
It's instant resolution.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the rest of us are put on this infinite, agonizing hold just listening to elevator music, completely disconnected from whoever is supposed to be running the show.
Well, to understand that disparity, the VIP treatment versus the infinite hold, we first have to look at the emotional stakes that Naidu establishes right at the beginning of his text.
He definitely doesn't sugarcoat it.
He really doesn't. He doesn't treat unanswered prayers as just some trivial disappointment. He describes the agony of that infinite hold in very visceral terms.
Yeah, he says it breeds a profound systemic discomfort.
Right, when supplications go unanswered, it leaves this devastating wake of hopelessness and complete disillusionment with the world.
In fact, he opens with this haunting existential question that really sets the tone. He asks, are we genuinely communicating with a higher power when we pray? Or are we simply crying out into the void with only hell responding?
That is such a heavy phrase.
With only hell responding, that specifically just stopped me in my tracks. It captures that absolute panic of feeling actively abandoned.
He is looking at that silence and questioning if a higher power even exists or if we're just shouting into a dark, empty room.
Right. But the brilliance of his approach is that he acknowledges that despair, but he refuses to just linger there.
Yeah, he doesn't just write a purely theoretical essay. He pivots immediately to a very practical, grounded answer based on a severe personal anecdote.
This is where the story gets really interesting.
He shares a story about finding himself in a deeply precarious situation. Now, the text doesn't bog us down with the granular details of the emergency itself.
Which I kind of wish he did, but I get it.
Right, but he makes it clear that it was a crisis threatening to completely derail his life's work in a remarkably short period of time.
Keep in mind, we are talking about a master of a discipline that requires supreme emotional control. And yet, he admits he was on the brink of absolute panic.
He felt utterly helpless.
Yeah. This wasn't a minor inconvenience like, oh, I lost my keys. This was a fundamental breaking point for him.
So in total desperation, he turns to prayer. He seeks that divine intervention.
But the mechanics of how that intervention actually arrives in his story are, well, they're not what you might expect.
Not at all.
He doesn't claim the sky opened up and a lightning bolt came down to magically fix his work.
No. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Naidu's experience fundamentally redefines what a miracle actually looks like in practice.
How so?
He views divine intervention not as a passive magic trick where the universe just does the work for you, but as an active collaboration.
A collaboration.
Yes, what happens in the text is subtle but crucial. He says he received a sudden intuition. That is the exact phrase he uses.
Just an internal nudge.
Right, an internal nudge prompting him to seek assistance from someone outside of his residence.
So he acts on that sudden intuition. He steps outside his home, and in this seemingly incredible turn of events, his neighbor happens to arrive at that exact moment,
Perfectly timed.
just ready to lend a helping hand. And because of this interaction, the crisis, this precarious situation that was going to destroy his work, is entirely resolved.
And the timeline is crazy.
It is resolved within 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Naidu looks at that timeline, he looks at the perfectly placed neighbor, and he becomes firmly, unshakably convinced that his prayer was answered through undeniable divine intervention.
He attributes the entirety of that sequence to a higher power. To Naidu, the answer to the desperate plea wasn't the work magically completing itself in his living room.
Right.
The answer was the intuition. It was the undeniable directive that guided him to the exact right physical location at the exact right second to intersect with the help that was already available.
Okay, I hear that, and I can completely understand why going through that specific sequence of events would be a profound, life-altering experience for him.
Absolutely.
But I have to push back on Naidu's conclusion here.
I had a feeling you might.
I mean, when I read that anecdote, my skeptical alarm bells just start ringing. How does Naidu, or how do any of us, really draw a definitive line between a lucky coincidence and a genuine response from the universe?
That's the big debate.
Right, a neighbor walking by your house when you're having a tough day. Isn't that just basic statistics? People walk by houses, neighbors exist. Why is he so fiercely convinced this defies probability and proves it was divine intervention?
Well, you are hitting on the exact friction point that modern Western-minded readers usually have with this kind of text.
Because it just sounds like a happy accident.
Exactly. We are conditioned to view the world as a chaotic series of random collisions and statistical probabilities. But you have to remember who is telling the story.
The Kihatsu master.
Yes. Naidu's entire life is dedicated to absolute awareness. He doesn't view reality as a series of isolated random events. He views it as a deeply interconnected ecosystem of cause and effect.
But even with supreme awareness, how does that rule out coincidence? Just because you are hyper-aware of a neighbor walking by doesn't mean the universe actually sent them.
To a master of this discipline, the perfection of the timing is the evidence. He is looking at the entire chain of causality.
Okay, break that down for me.
You have the overwhelming sense of panic, followed by this specific concentrated act of desperate prayer, followed immediately by a highly specific intuition that goes against his current state of panic.
Because usually when you're panicking, you just freeze up indoors.
Right, you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
But he acts on the intuition, steps outside, and the neighbor arrives at that microscopic window of time, leading to a total resolution in 30 minutes.
Okay, I see this tight timeline there.
For Naidu, the mathematical perfection of that sequence defies mere probability. But more importantly, his certainty comes from his broader hypothesis about how the universe actually operates. He doesn't believe in randomness at all.
Which brings us to the actual core of his text, and honestly the most controversial part of his framework.
It definitely raises some eyebrows.
Let's play along and accept his premise for a moment. Let's say the neighbor's perfectly timed arrival was indeed a direct, divine response to his prayer.
Okay, tracking with you.
That forces us to ask the natural and honestly somewhat painful follow-up question, why him?
Ah, yes.
Why did Naidu get that immediate 30-minute miracle complete with a perfectly timed neighbor when so many other people who are in equally desperate or even more terrifying situations are left crying into the void with only hell responding?
That's a tough question, but Naidu's central theory addresses that disparity head-on. And he doesn't leave any room for ambiguity.
He really doesn't.
He argues that the efficacy of prayer is entirely contingent upon an individual's personal balance of good deeds versus bad deeds.
Wow.
In his framework, divine intervention is not arbitrary. It is not based on how loudly you pray, or how articulate your request is, or even how objectively desperate your situation might be.
It's dictated by a strict cosmic balance sheet.
Exactly. the math of the universe.
He lays it out with such mathematical coldness. He states clearly that when an individual's malevolent actions outweigh their benevolent ones, their prayers are rendered ineffective. Full stop. The line is dead.
Right.
But conversely, when good deeds predominate in a person's life, their prayers are consistently answered.
What's fascinating here is how Naidu strips away the mystical fog that usually surrounds the concept of divine communication.
Yeah, he makes it very mechanical.
We often treat prayer like a lottery ticket. Maybe we'll get lucky, maybe God is in a good mood today.
Yeah.
But in Naidu's worldview, the universe is perfectly logical, highly systematic, and completely responsive.
But it's a system that only responds to those who have actively cultivated the right moral environment within themselves.
Precisely. And he frames this cultivation as an ongoing internal and external war. He specifically uses the terms dharma and karma.
And it is worth noting how he defines those terms for the purpose of this text. He explicitly defines dharma as good deeds and karma as bad actions.
And he takes it a step further by localizing that cosmic war right inside the human mind. He says this battle between dharma and karma is fundamentally a battle between a good conscience and a bad one.
Your conscience.
Yeah, your conscience isn't just a psychological guilt mechanism in this framework. It is the actual antenna that connects you to the divine frequency.
Okay, a bad conscience introduces static, and a good conscience provides a clear signal. That is such a vivid way to picture it. He is essentially saying that your moment-to-moment morality dictates your connectivity to the universe.
The ultimate requirement for an effective prayer life, according to Naidu, isn't about learning the right chants or the right rituals.
Is the work.
It is the grueling daily work of cultivating goodness and, in his words, aligning oneself with the universe. If you achieve that alignment through a predominance of good deeds, he suggests that prayer becomes a consistently reliable, almost predictable means of communication.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. As I was reading his breakdown of this battle between dharma and karma, this invisible balance sheet of good and bad deeds, my brain immediately mapped it onto a concept we all deal with every day.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It is essentially a cosmic credit score.
The cosmic credit score. Oh, that is a brilliant translation of the concept. Walk us through how you see that mapping onto Naidu's framework.
Well, think about the core insight behind how financial credit works in the real world.
Okay.
The biggest mistake people make is thinking they can secure a massive loan at the exact moment they experience a catastrophic financial crisis.
Or when they're desperate.
Exactly. Even if they have spent the last 10 years defaulting on debts and making terrible financial choices, the system doesn't care about your sudden desperation. It only cares about your history.
So true.
If you go to the system with no capital, your request is denied. You are left completely hopeless, crying into the void of the financial sector.
Because the system only responds to the data on the ledger.
Exactly. To get that lifeline when you desperately need it, you have to have spent years building up your history. You make deposits, you pay your debts, you maintain a positive balance so that your account is in excellent standing when you finally need to make a massive emergency withdrawal.
And Naidu is saying the universe operates on the exact same principle.
Yes, just with morality as the currency.
I love that. So the deposits are your benevolent actions, your daily choices to engage in dharma.
Yep.
And the defaults are your malevolent actions, your karma. Naidu is arguing forcefully that you cannot treat the higher power like an emergency vending machine where you just insert a panicked prayer and expect a miracle to drop out.
You have to possess the cosmic capital to back up the request.
And if your malevolent actions outweigh your benevolent ones, if your cosmic credit score is in the tank because of a string of selfish choices, your prayers are, as he says, rendered ineffective.
Your card is declined at the terminal. The universe essentially says, insufficient funds of goodness. Request denied.
Wow. Adopting this perspective drastically changes the entire dynamic of how a person moves through their daily life.
It really does.
If you truly internalize Naidu's framework, every single action matters. Every passing interaction with a stranger, every decision you make in your professional life when no one is watching, every private thought you entertain.
It all becomes a measurable deposit or withdrawal.
It moves away from the vague, abstract goal of just trying to be a good person. It becomes a highly practical, almost utilitarian approach to universal alignment.
It's maintenance.
Yes. Cultivating a pure conscience is the literal mechanical maintenance required to keep your emergency hotline to the divine fully operational.
It totally reframes that anecdote about his neighbor showing up too. Under the cosmic credit score framework, Naidu's prayer wasn't just miraculously answered in a vacuum during that 30-minute window.
Right. It wasn't just a lucky 30 minutes.
That 30-minute miracle was the direct payout of years, perhaps decades, of him cultivating a rigorous good conscience, of performing consistent good deeds and strictly aligning himself with the universe through his Kihatsu training.
He had a massive balance saved up.
Exactly. The sudden intuition to step outside wasn't a random gift. It was the universe honoring his immaculate credit score.
Which brings a profound, almost intimidating weight to his assertion that this is a war. The battle between a good conscience and a bad one isn't just an intellectual debate for philosophers.
No, it's very real for him.
It is a moment-by-moment survival struggle. It dictates your variability to access higher help when you find yourself on the brink of absolute ruin. And importantly, it completely removes the concept of victimhood from unanswered prayers.
That's the tough part.
It is. In Naidu's system, if you are met with silence, it is not because the universe is cruel or arbitrary or dead. It is because you simply haven't done the prerequisite work to align your frequency. You haven't generated the moral capital required to initiate the connection.
I have to admit, that is an incredibly tough pill to swallow.
It's harsh.
To look at someone who is suffering deeply, someone who feels they're crying out for a lifeline and getting absolutely nothing but the void, and to essentially tell them it is because their malevolent actions outweigh their benevolent ones.
Yeah.
That is a strict, uncompromising, and honestly somewhat terrifying view of reality.
It is uncompromising. But we have to remember the source here. It is entirely consistent with the unforgiving discipline of a martial arts master.
True. In the dojo, there are no shortcuts.
None. Results are based entirely on practice, form, and relentless discipline. You cannot magically fake a defensive technique in a moment of life or death crisis if you haven't put in the thousands of hours of unseen training beforehand.
Naidu is simply taking that exact same physical rigor and applying it to spiritual mechanics.
Exactly.
So we have untacked the agony of the void. Dharma versus karma.
It's a lot to process.
It is. So for those of us trying to navigate our own daily lives who aren't Kihatsu masters spending hours a day in meditation, what is the ultimate takeaway from this dense philosophical text?
I think we have to look at how Naidu himself lands the plane. He distills his entire complex hypothesis into one definitive, almost poetic conclusion at the very end of the text.
What's the line?
He states, "Goodness protects the good, and badness destroys the bad, and purity answers all prayers."
Purity answers all prayers.
Wow.
Wow. That is a massive definitive statement to make.
It is the ultimate distillation of his entire framework. Notice what that sentence implies. Prayer itself is not the variable.
Okay.
The universe's willingness to listen is not the variable. The person is the only variable.
Oh, I see.
The cosmic hotline is always there, always perfectly functional, and always fully staffed. It is our purity, our daily granular balance of dharma over karma, that serves as the password to make the call connect.
It really forces you to stop and brutally evaluate your own balance sheet. If we view our daily actions through Naidu's martial arts lens, it elevates the stakes of absolutely everything we do.
It changes everything.
How we interact with the people around us changes. Holding the door for a stranger, choosing to tell the truth in a difficult situation at work, forcing yourself to choose patience over an outburst of anger.
They aren't small things anymore.
Suddenly, these aren't just polite social niceties. They are essential, non-negotiable maintenance for that cosmic hotline. They are the deposits ensuring that when we inevitably face our own terrifying, precarious situations, our account is well-funded and our connection is crystal clear.
It shifts the entire focus of spirituality. Instead of constantly asking the universe to magically change our external circumstances, Naidu challenges us to ruthlessly change our internal character.
Because character is currency?
Because in this rigorous framework, character is the absolute only currency the universe recognizes.
Which leaves you with a lingering, highly provocative thought to chew on as you go about your day.
What's that?
Well, if purity and good deeds are the strict required currency for getting a response from the universe, does that mean every instance of bad luck? Or every single time you throw a desperate plea out there and get put on infinite hold, is that actually the universe's way of telling you that you need to audit your own conscience?
That is the uncomfortable, brilliant implication of Naidu's work. In his world, The silence of the void isn't an absence of an answer.
No.
The silence is the answer, is a direct invitation to look inward and fix the ledger.
So the next time you feel like you are desperately dialing that cosmic customer service hotline and all you hear is the deafening silence of the void, maybe the first step isn't to pray harder. Maybe the first step is to check your credit score. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.